Welcome to Focus on Why, the podcast where reflection sparks action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and together we'll explore compelling stories, profound insights, and transformative experiences from inspiring guests worldwide. Feeling lost or unfulfilled? Searching for clarity, purpose, or meaning in your work and life? This podcast invites you on a journey of self-discovery to align your work with your values, shape your future with intention, and create a purposeful way of life. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we dive in, let me share how I can transform your journey as a purpose coach. I specialize in helping you get crystal clear on your why, aligning your passion with your purpose, and crafting a plan to create the life you truly desire. Book a free 30-minute coaching call today. The link is in the show notes. Let's start building your purposeful future together. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Ray Flores. Welcome, Ray. How are you?
Amy, I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And I think it was you who reached out to me and said, might I be a good fit? And often I don't take on board people who I don't know that well, but we had a great chat and I knew that your story needed to be shared on Focus on Why. So here we are. Share with the audience what it is that you are focusing on right now.
Right now, I am focusing on human flourishing. That's the thing that drives me. So I create a whole bunch of content. I go on podcasts. I write in my newsletter, and I coach people, hands-on, high performers in high performance with a purpose-driven sort of fire in their belly. That's my focus.
It sounds very familiar. So how did you come to this particular point in your life that you knew that this was what you wanted to do?
Oh, I think the origin story explains quite a bit of it, because as with everybody, we are these beautiful, very unique set of strands, like a tapestry, right? That is weaved through life. And for me, it was, I guess, experiencing a whole lot of uncertainty in my early years. You know, I was a refugee when I was 5 years old. We moved from country to country because of that. So it's, Chile, Russia, Germany, Russia, Africa, back to Russia. My mom is Russian, my dad's Chilean. And we saw so much unrest, so much crisis, I guess, right? And I think that instilled this sense of, I guess, drive, motivation, maybe a tolerance for risk that is higher than normal. The creative side was, I was a singer since I was a kid. Then I had a very successful music career. I did a lot of video production, so I have this sort of media dimension that has been almost like this constant thread in my life. So we do a lot of media, a lot of content. We have a media company as well. So that's that part. And I would say human flourishing probably stems from those things as well, because I've seen so much, I would say, limiting factors to human flourishing that are from the outside in, that I focused quite a bit, very intuitively early on. Okay, what are the things that can defy the odds, right? How can you train yourself? How can you be different? How can you stand out so that you're not limited by your circumstances? And I just became incredibly passionate about personal development very, very early on in life, and that passion never went away. And that's what I write about, talk about, coach in. It's a passion of mine.
I can tell, and it's an incredible story. What I feel from this is that there's so much light for someone who has experienced so much darkness or potential to be exposed to that through what you described as being a 5-year-old with all the uncertainty of being a refugee and going through from country to country. And yet fear wasn't ever mentioned. It was part of that journey. Drive, motivation, and a tolerance to risk was.
Yeah.
Tell
Interesting,
me more.
My theory, and I love talking about this and helping people understand almost like the anatomy of that, right? Um, is that we do have a choice, and the choice is how do we interpret the injustices, the oppression, perhaps, the things that really have nothing to do with you, and you are still a victim of those things. And how do you go from a victim to a victor? And it's really in the interpretation of the event. The truth is, all of us, every single one of us, were built as anti-fragile beings, right? And I can prove it to you in like 30 seconds. Your physical body is an anti-fragile organism, right? So if you do nothing and sit on the couch, you're going to be weakened. But if you expose yourself to this sort of systematic but mild suffering in the gym, in running or lifting, your body will become stronger, more flexible, more able. Your whole system will tune up, right? And I that's how I think about life in general. So I just happen to be my optimism was forged in a little bit more of an extreme situation, but it translates directly to your life, even if you live in the very prosperous Western society. Is that life has a lot of suffering regardless of where you live. So if you know how to interpret, you know how to basically create gold out of lead, right? in your daily suffering, and you develop some lifestyle changes, some mindset changes. It's unbelievable your ability, your potential, how it just grows and expands and overflows into just tremendous progress on all kinds of fronts.
And that move from gold into lead, that alchemy that you're talking about, one of my
Yeah.
favorite books as a side with Paulo Coelho's The
Oh,
Alchemist.
right. That's right.
Yeah. It's about purpose. It's about understanding, for me, this optimism that you said is can be forged in more extreme situations, but it is about recognizing the meaning of every moment, the
Yes.
opportunity for you to choose what
Hmm.
that meaning is for you, and know that often the one that comes first doesn't have to be the one that you stay with for you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I coach people in a very like a pretty wide range of life situations, ages, levels of success and wealth. And one of the huge benefits for me is being around people who are basically in the stratosphere, right? From the outside in, and realize that they go through the same exact emotional ups and downs, the same exact valleys, the same exact despair and anxiety, and knowing, oh, it doesn't change. That part in the human experience does not change. So the only thing that we need to do, we can't dilute ourselves by thinking, oh, once I reach this point, everything's going to be easier. It just doesn't. It doesn't work like that. So you don't have a choice. You either learn how to be anti-fragile, how to progress and grow, and knowing that suffering will be a companion, a constant companion. Hopefully, you'll reduce self-induced suffering, right? But if you understand that this is actually true, that you must learn those things, and you must lean into suffering that produces growth and transformation, or you will be almost like this perpetual victim. And once you understand those are the choices, I mean, it's not a hard decision, to be honest with you.
And you say you don't have a choice. Of course, you do have a choice of
Yeah.
accepting this or not. And many people do. Many
Hmm.
people will refuse to
Yes.
live a slightly harder, in some
Yeah.
respects, life because you have to put in the effort.
Yeah. It's very primal. We want our brain will object, strenuously object to any risk, anything that is perceived as danger or suffering, because our brain is there to help us survive. It's not really the function of the brain, of our sort of, especially our primal part of the brain, to help us thrive, right? So that must be achieved through not just paying attention to the most primal instincts that we have. And we all have those instincts. They just don't go away.
Absolutely. You mentioned human flourishing. Now, flourishing for me means something slightly different to because of what it means with the positive psychology element. Is that the angle that you come from, or is it a flourishing? How do you define it?
I think positive psychology is probably the greatest achievement, you know, in the last 20 years, because psychology is a young science, right? It's a young discipline. And when Martin Seligman came up with the concept, and all this sort of this cohort of brilliant people followed and did the research, they just discovered that some of the classic assumptions they just have never actually worked. So it's better to stop doing the things that don't work. And there's incredible power in focusing on things that are life-giving, positive, sort of affirming of your agency, of your ability to carve your own path, et cetera, et cetera.
And for you, some of those classic assumptions that don't work, that it's constantly evolving and we're learning more and more all the time. Have there been anybody that you have aligned yourself with more so who's worked in this area?
That's a good question. I like the work of Arthur C. Brooks. He's a Harvard researcher. And one of the things that was tremendously helpful to me in his teaching is a book that he wrote called From Strength to Strength. And he talks about the fluid curve, I believe, and the crystallized curve of giftedness, right? That happens in the beginning of life, sort of, and by the midlife, this one curve that is highly, highly flexible and creative starts declining. Your ability to do certain things starts declining, but other abilities are naturally strengthening, and they go forever. And to me, that was one of the most incredible, like, clear, I mean, research-based things that helped me understand midlife crisis, for example, right? Is that you have seasons in life, and you need to understand that those seasons are actually universal, right? So I sort of derived from Arthur's work 4 seasons that I see, right? Can I tell you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear
Well,
them.
they are. So, and what I find is, and I think maybe even your listeners will be able to identify themselves very quickly, is that there's 4 seasons, especially in the sense of vocation, right? The things that you do professionally. So there's the student, you're in school, you're even in a university, but you're observing life. You're not really participating in it professionally. You're just sort of learning about it. You're looking at it from the outside in. Then you become a practitioner of whatever thing, right? And usually you're not very good. So as you practice, and then the first tension, the second tension, the first tension in between seasons is you become a student. You think they've taught you, you know everything about, let's say, being a marketing professional in school, and you land in a marketing firm and you realize you know close to nothing, and you start questioning, why did I go to college and spend $100,000 in college for? This is obviously talking about price points in America. And then you become a practitioner, that you actually start learning by doing. And hopefully, if you're apprenticing, that's even a better thing. And then the things that got you excited about being in the professional workforce and being busy, maybe bringing coffee, doing sort of a little bit more simpler tasks while you learn the craft, you become dissatisfied because you're turning into a new season. And that's the season of a master, right? Now, the things that got you excited when you were a practitioner don't get you excited anymore, and you want to own a company or run a department or have higher responsibilities, higher wages. And you don't know how to transition into that. You don't know how to ask for more, or how to prove yourself to the world so that you're acknowledged and your status gets upgraded or given more opportunities. So that's the mid-season awkwardness, right? That happens. And then the same thing happens later when you have built something for years and decades, perhaps, and you start transitioning naturally from this season of master to a season of sage. And the sage starts feeling that they don't enjoy sort of the hustle anymore. They don't enjoy the building, even the things that they've done for forever, and they've done well, but they start feeling this instinct, this deeper intuition into wanting to leave a legacy and to invest in other people, right? That's the sage part. And in between seasons, people get really stuck, right? For example, a sage, who's, you're supposed to embrace being a sage, but you go, no, 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 I'm going to build one more startup, you know, or I'm going to get that red Ferrari so I can feel like I'm, you know, that guy again, right? You know, we do all kinds of foolish things in between seasons that are really don't help us advance. But because the next step, the next season is almost like in a fog, right? It's sort of hidden from us. We don't know how to navigate that. We sort of spin our wheels and go in circles for a bit until we figure out, okay, how do I step in? How do I embrace that? And the good news is that in every season you can flourish tremendously, and the flourishing never ends. And that's what I love about this, right? Is that the flourishing, you can go in well into your 80s and 90s and be incredibly fruitful, fulfilled, if you embrace the right season at the right time.
I love the use of the word season and these life transitions that you speak about, where there is resistance in between that liminal state of neither one nor the other, the fear of letting go and then
Yeah.
also embracing the next. It is a difficult phase for sure, and yes, you describe it as midlife crises, or it is often the case that it's described like that. I choose to call them midlife beginnings because they are opportunities to move into the next phase,
Yes. Yeah.
knowing that.
Okay, I have a term for you. So, if you look up on my podcast, I have an interview with this guy Chip Conley. Chip Conley he's one of the I think early members. He's not the founding member, but he's definitely a very, very early member of the team that built Airbnb. And he calls it the midlife chrysalis. And the chrysalis is the thing when the caterpillar actually turns into a butterfly, right? So it's a really optimistic. It's a great term, right, of transformation into just a different, better thing, right? So that's the midlife chrysalis. And Chip actually runs this great organization in the U.S. now called the Modern Elder Academy that basically teaches professionals how to transition. And some of my clients, even they are definitely in that phase, and we talk about that. And like I mean, I can rattle off three people. One, a wonderful gentleman in Canada who we talked to, and he built a great accounting firm that is basically being acquired, and it's like his whole life is building this thing. It was an amazing thing, and he made it work, and he gave employment to many people and helped many people. And now this new chapter is like in a fog. This other gentleman I talked to maybe like 2 weeks ago, he ran an airline for 35 years. And then his tenure is ending, and he literally talks to me in tears up. He goes, I'm scared out of my mind. I don't know what to do with myself, you know. So so it's story after story after story. You see that midlife chrysalis, right? This transition from master to sage show up in very, very distinctive ways, and these are very accomplished people, and it's still not easy, right?
And that's the thing with the metaphor of the chrysalis that you're using here, is that it's a struggle to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not an easy like shoop, I'm out. It actually is a
No,
process, and the part of the process is to help the evolution of that phase with the development of what's going on for the butterfly. It's important that that happens, that it's not
that's
easy.
exactly. Yeah, it's painful. I mean, it really is. And you cannot avoid that pain. You have to sort of embrace the pain.
Yeah, and I also heard someone saying the other day about the discomfort that a snake has in shedding its skin. I don't think it's
Yeah, yeah,
painful
yeah.
as such, but it is a discomfort. So this transition that you're speaking of, so many people get wrapped up in the identity of what they were doing as opposed to
Yes.
who they are.
Hmm.
Has that been something that you've had clarity on, and if so, how long for?
I think for me, this is almost like a perpetual thing because chronically ADHD professionally, and so so uh, I'm much more. I think I'm more needy in that area, in a good way, in the sense that I have to be to survive, to thrive. I have to be very, very self-aware, right? So my lifestyle includes a lot of contemplation, meditation, prayer, journaling, because I need to process the competing passions that drive me, and it's not easy. I do 3 or 4 things at any given time, and it's probably not healthy. It's definitely not normal. It's probably not healthy. And sort of going through this and refining your focus and your intention. For me, it's really a matter of it's not even optional, because I just sink if I don't do that. But so it's a constant thing for me. It really, really is.
Well, I will join you on that Bandcamp of being an adult who has recently had a diagnosis of ADHD. It was a couple of years ago now. So, yes, it's been a very insightful understanding that there is a reason behind the way that I am.
Yes, and I would say I really I resent the sort of the term, honestly, as a disorder. I don't think it's a disorder. I think it's just a state of being, and as any state of being, any way you are wired, uh, there's incredible power in it. And also, there's also always a shadow side, right? So you have to minimize the shadow side, maximize the power.
We could take this whole podcast in a different direction, but I'm going to
That's
stay with the
right.
focus on why and purpose, just
Okay.
because for the benefit of that being the space that it is, and purpose for you. And again, the why behind what it is that you're doing, the understanding of working with people to encourage human flourishing. Tell me more about the purpose and why for you.
I will come across, I know, a little lofty, um, but I really truly know this to be true. And my why is love. I just really love people, and I just look at a person and I can see their heart, their potential, their talent, what can happen with that if that's channeled to the benefit of people around him or her. And I just get very, very enthusiastic. So that is my why. It really is.
And why would you describe that as being lofty?
Well, because it might sound a bit, you know, I don't know, either poetic or idealistic or impractical, or perhaps even
And
a cop. Oh, yeah, exactly. Or I don't find anything wrong with that, but it definitely can sound like that to somebody. Go, oh, whatever. You start rolling your eyes, going, love, of course, John Lennon. Thank you for that. You know, but it is what it is. So I say it like it is.
yeah, John Lennon certainly wasn't the first person to say
No.
all you need is love. It's a concept. It's a universal
Yes.
feeling, state,
Hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
Is there anything higher than love?
I don't think so. I really don't.
No.
Yeah,
So,
it's the purest fuel you can run on, I think. One of the things that I talk about quite a bit and work with people on is the fuel, because we all run on these sort of polluted fuels, right? Mixed fuels, and I believe everybody is wired to be high performance force in something for somebody. And just like with any car, like I drive a high performance car, for example. If I put like normal fuel in my high performance car, it's not going to function well. I only put premium fuel in my high performance car. And I think we all, especially if you're very, very driven, you have this sort of Ferrari in your mind, right, in your heart. But the fuel can be very mixed, right? It's not just it's always the highest grade, but it's mixed with other things. It could be resentment, insecurity, revenge, even anger. Um, um, it could be almost like the idolatrous desire for recognition. It could be ego. It could be all kinds of stuff. So I think that's why I say metacognition, the practices every day of understanding yourself well, know thyself, right? It's really the practice of purifying the fuel you run on. And as you do, you will see change, right? The purest fuel, the better the fuel, the higher grade fuel, the higher you'll go, the further you'll go without collateral damage and, things that you don't want to see as sort of the byproducts of your journey.
And you mentioned these pollutants as being resentment, anger, recognition, insecurity, revenge, ego. They're also useful for us to have to understand what they're telling us. They're
Yes, of
important
course.
messages.
Yeah.
So, what happens when you ignore or shift or dilute or whatever it is that you're doing with your metaphor to wouldn't dilute it, but to make it more pure? What's happening with these pollutants?
I think you're processing them out and you start recognizing them as actual fuel. You see that they're actually slowing you down and harming you. That's what happens, right? So I'll give you a very practical example. It's more high contrast because it's in my 20s, right? I had a lot of pollutants in my 20s, and but my very first professional career was in Eastern Europe. I graduated with a master's degree in economics, but all of my friends went into finance. I went into music, like the most impractical move ever, and I was just so driven, but also very, very lucky. And I became one of the top pop artists in Russia for like a decade. All of that former Soviet Union space, all these countries, 15 countries, right? And I can very clearly see the mixed fuel there. For example, I'll give you an example. So what's a good fuel? It's the good fuel is this desire, this ability to translate human emotion into a song, into a performance that touches people, that it just resonates with them, makes them feel things. A desire a vision that this can reach millions and millions, and it did. A great drive to recruit the best people to be in your crew, right? And to love them and to train them and to be demanding, but also very patient with them. A great eye to partner with the right producers, for example, right? I had 2 partners and they were amazing. And then with that, there was these sort of low grade fuels. I'll list them for you. A desire to be famous so that it can guarantee love. Well, love doesn't work that way. you know, the desire to be famous, to be accepted, the ego to compete against other creators as if art can be compared to each other, and it actually can't. So what that gave me is this unhealthy desire to stay on top, stay on top, stay on top, and you'll never be all the time on top. So that's actually bad fuel. A desire, an ego-driven sort of artistic sort of passion that compares you to others makes you want to be better than them or beat them. And so I look back and I go, my gosh, I have all these friends who are my peers, and they're still really, really successful. And at the time, instead of saying, hey, let's write a song together, let's do a duet, can we do like a tour together and we do this and this and this and collaborate and maximize what you bring to the table and I bring to the table? But instead of that, I consider them as my competitors. It's like a zero-sum game kind of situation. My lack of, for example, I said I wanted to be a pure artist, and I don't want to get overly involved in business negotiations with, let's say, TV stations, radio stations, labels. Well, that was stupid. I was very well educated, and it was protecting myself from things that are sort of mundane in my mind at the time. And I could have done a much better job than even my management team at negotiating and connecting and building relationship that are business relationships, not artistic relationships. But it was too mundane for me at the time, right? So my point is, I can literally talk for about an hour on other things that were fueling me that didn't help me, But if I had the self-awareness of the guidance, the coaching to understand, okay, this is not the right fuel, let's remove that, I would have had a 10x level of success.
And that leads me perfectly on to asking you, how do you define success now?
Doing things that serve other people with people that you love. To me, that's success. Doing more. Serving others is the highest level of fulfillment. And collaborating with people who you love is the highest level of high performance, I think. Because you have weaknesses others don't. They have weaknesses you don't. And if you really love them and trust them, and you can overcome anything. I believe in investing in people long term, right? I'm attracted to people who want to be around me long term and want to put some deep roots with me so we can build something beautiful together.
And this desire for long term, to play this long game, essentially to be there for others and measuring success on collaboration versus competition, to know that you are always prioritizing your growth and your learning. It goes right back to where you started this whole conversation, saying that you started your personal development at a very early age. You were aware of of self-awareness for a start. That's one of the greatest gifts that you gave yourself, or did you get taught by someone to become aware of this?
Yeah, I was basically kicked in the face by my lack of self-awareness and by the flaws that I dismissed and didn't think they were important, and they were. And I was literally at the peak of my first professional success, and I was clinically depressed because my flaws, my blind spots had caught up with me. And then I met my first coach. Then I was 26 years old, and looked at him and I said, "This is not someone I want to learn. He's not a musician. He's not a producer. He's just a person I admire. So it's not about knowing what he knows. It's about being what he is." And to me, that's the definition of actually true apprenticeship. The lost art, actually, right? That we have, I think, in our post-industrial age of learning almost like as a conveyor belt, right? Um, uh, we just don't apprentice under people. And true learning is deep learning. True learning is apprenticeship, not just a formal education with just a transfer of information. The true learning is wanting to be like the person you are being coached by rather than knowing what they know. And for me, that was just such a transformative experience working with this person that I just never stopped. And then I started coaching myself, and I could see people coming to me, right? Other artists and entrepreneurs and athletes, and I'm like, you know, what is this, right? And I thought maybe because I was a celebrity, that was sort of the case. But then when we moved to the States, I had to start over. So uh, nobody here knows or cares who I am, when I moved. And that same thing started happening. And I realized, okay, that's a pattern. That's a giftedness. That is something I really enjoy. And I almost have this thing that comes naturally to me. And also it's nurtured, right? That I can look at somebody and work with somebody and help them make significant changes in their lives.
And there's that phrase that comes to mind, is when the student is ready, the master will present itself, or teacher
That's
will present
right.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah. If and the student being ready, I think it's really more of a, are you willing to be humble? Are you willing to be vulnerable with someone? And it's very, very hard for successful people in general, you know, because the ego is there, and you have sort of this, I don't know, you're accustomed to a level of status and respect and admiration that you find it very hard to be weak. And if you're listening and if you're in that place and you have pain in your life, my advice to you is find someone who can guide you, who you can be weak with, who you can be vulnerable, you can be needy with that person. I recently had a conversation with a friend who I mentor, who manages billions of dollars, and he was going through some rough waters in his firm, and I said, "Hey, who do you have in your life besides me?" And he, mentioned a couple of people, and I said, in this season, go spend time with them and be needy. Just be needy. Just be okay with that. You need this to be healthy. And to him, it was like, man, that was jarring because I'm not accustomed to feel that way. But this is the best advice ever. I really need to be needy for a week or two, right around my friends, because I'm just really, really struggling right now. And I think it's particularly hard for people who are from the standpoint, from the outside in, very, very successful, financially successfully, etc. It's hard to be needy. It's hard to be weak. But the stronger man, the most evolved person, will know, I need to be needy. I need to be weak. I need to have at least one person who I can just spill it out and say, this is what I feel, right? And then that person can listen and be compassionate, but also speak truth, speak gently, speak wisdom, and sort of help them map a path forward. And I don't care what level of success you're in, you'll find those valleys 100%. It's inevitable. So you have to equip yourself with this ability and this understanding of life.
And it goes back to supporting your case around the highest level of fulfillment being serving and giving, and the
Yeah,
highest level of performance being collaborating with others, because this gives you an opportunity to do both.
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. You'll always find, I mean, if you're a spiritual person, like I believe in a creator, and I think a creator, he gives us these strengths that are just extraordinary strengths that we need to actually even understand and mind that there are true strengths that can help other people. Most people are actually underestimate how gifted they are. But he also gives us these weaknesses that force us to collaborate, to flourish, right? You have to, So like, there's no such thing as a well-rounded, successful person all around. It just doesn't exist. So the most successful people, they realize that and they go, okay, look around. Who do I build with, who can compensate for my weaknesses and my flat sides?
And believing in a creator is one thing. Believing you're able to create is an
Yeah,
entirely different conversation.
it
And
really is.
that
That's another podcast.
absolutely. So in terms of how you bring the economics and the creative side together in your world,
Yeah.
what is it that forms the parts of the rest of you?
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand the question. What you're saying is, how do the economic how does economics, you mean the business side, coincide with the creator side, correct? Is that what you're saying?
I think the question is, what makes
Mm-hmm.
Christian Ray Flores?
Ah, um, well, that's a big question. Um, I think for me, at the very least in this season, like I don't want to just go for ramble for a long time. What I love is that I have a set of insights, skills, superpowers, and I can be of service on like multiple levels of change, of transformation, and it's very scalable because we live in an age now where you can help anyone anywhere at any time, right? It's just an incredible time to be alive, to be honest with you. Like, you and I are speaking and we're sharing deep truths, your expertise of the last decades of work. You are a skillful interviewer. I'm basically sharing what I've learned in the last 30 plus years, of being a practitioner to master to sage. And we're unpacking this, we're giving this away for free. And to me, that's just so inspiring because we can do this infinitely. And it could be a few hundred people, it could be a few dozen people, it could be a few million people, and they benefit from it. So that's sort of a big part of why I do a lot of guest podcasting, my own podcasting, I have a newsletter, is because this is so wonderful that I can share something and it can be scaled to anyone who can benefit and wants to pay attention and implement what I'm sharing. And then on a micro level and a sort of hands-on level, I can coach people one-on-one or small cohorts. That is like just so it's powerful because it's hands-on, right? It's one thing to study the biography of Elon Musk, right? I'm reading the book right now, for example, right? And go, oh my gosh, I can see how some of the thinking, some of the decisions, even some of the mistakes can guide my journey professionally. Um, it's another thing to be mentored by Elon Musk. If you dare to even, I would probably not survive that, or even be, because I'm not. That's not my aspiration, right? But if you want to be like that, imagine being in his presence and being with him 24/7. I actually know, personally met the guy who runs one of the gigafactories here in Austin, the gigafactory here in Austin, and so I've sort of poked his brain and go, so how is this? And because it's really intense, man, but it's a whole completely different level of influence and much more rapid progress if you're in the team, right? So I get to do hands-on training of people, and it's like taking a plane to a destination rather than taking a bicycle, right? And I get to also disseminate free information, experiences, stories that can touch people, thousands of people all over, that can give them even incremental progress. And everybody has access to it. And I think it's just the most wonderful time to be alive, so we can do this, right? Even you and I are doing this right now.
It is an incredible time to be alive. And on that note, I received a message from someone I had a casual conversation with, who I met on a ski holiday 7 years ago. And they reached out yesterday to say, thank you so much for that conversation. You have no idea how much impact it had. And so
Wow.
the reflection with action that will arise from this conversation, the ripple effect,
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
only in the next week, 2 weeks, month, year, but for years to come. Somebody will listen to this podcast because it has a great shelf life as a medium, and they'll hear what you have to say. And that blows my mind, because
Yeah.
they will then take action as a result of it. Again, it's a choice. They may choose to ignore it, but
Yeah, exactly. But
that's on
somebody will
them.
pay attention. Yeah. Somebody
Yeah.
will pay attention. And what a privilege it is, right, for you and I to sort of share something that we've learned for decades and decades. And it's sort of low effort, relatively speaking, because you're there and I'm here, but it's recorded, it's packaged, it's distributed worldwide, and somebody somewhere, it will change their lives, right? Incredible.
Yeah, and that message will be different for each listener, whatever it is. And often when I listen back to these episodes, when I'm doing my own reflections with actions, I hear things that are different,
Yeah,
or I
yeah,
hear
yeah.
something that's more important to me at that time, because I'm looking for different things at different times. So you can hear the same message and it will sit differently with you each time.
Yeah, yeah, it's magical. It really is.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing why you do what you do. Have you got a way that people could reach out? What's the best? I know I'll put them in the show notes, but what's the best way for someone who's heard Christian Ray Flores speak on the podcast? What is it they need to do?
Okay, so basically, in line with what I just said, right? If you are if you're thinking, you know what, I really want to hear more, uh, um, because I just want to be inspired. I want to get to a place where I can take more action. Just find me on Substack. It's christianrayflores.com. It's my newsletter. It drops twice a week, and I have a free post every single week on Sundays, and I have a one only for paid subscribers. That's my way of thanking them when we do deep dives. And it's like a latte a month. That's the cost, and you can just be sort of have a little bit of a drip of good fuel into your life every week, twice a week. But if you go, you know what, I want to be an apprentice. I don't want to just listen or read a biography or get insights, but I actually want to be coached. If you're in that place, go to exponential.life. And the exponential, the word exponential is spelled without the E, starts with an X, kind of the cool way to spell it. And you'll find sort of more details about that and how you can join the program. And there's a free thing there that I really highly recommend you take. And it's basically a scorecard that we actually use with our clients, and we just give it away. And it will ask you like 40 plus questions, take about 7-8 minutes to complete. And it gives you this very personalized report on the most important dimensions of life and where you are in those dimensions. So it's a nice place to get almost like a checking your vitals, so to say, right? So it's very healthy and it's free, so you can just fill it out and get that in your inbox.
My goodness, this podcast has been littered with metaphors. It really has. But they are the easiest way to translate a concept and to really drive home a meaning so that people remember it. It's a great way of storytelling. So thank you again for sharing why you do what you do. Have you got a final word or two for the listener, please?
My call to action is this, or maybe my call to consider something is this. Most people, because we're wired, like our brains, they're working very hard for you to survive, but not thrive necessarily. Most people aim for the middle because they want to survive and not thrive. They sort of cave to that instinct. And the best thing you can do is actually aim high and not to the middle, because the middle is crowded. Most people are in the middle. So it's actually harder to do well in the middle. But if you aim high, it's actually freer, more exciting, a little bit more risky. But I think you'll find it in the long term to be the best way to live.
This episode's over, but let's keep the conversation going. How has this episode impacted you? Share your insights, takeaways, and reflections with actions on social media, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback creates powerful ripple effects, helping others to discover its value. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for links on how to work with me, where to buy my new book, Focus on Why, Create a Purposeful Way of Life, available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, and where to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.